Donna lived with her husband, Walter, who, in spite of his lack of employment, had grown more controlling. Walter, the stay-at-home spouse, took care of household chores while Donna went to work to provide for them. Although the purpose of their arrangement was to give stability, Donna felt her contributions were ineffective because of Walter's domineering behavior. One day, Walter gloated that he would let his parents live with them, implying that Donna may move in with her in-laws without her permission. His boldness astounded and confused Donna, especially because she was the one who owned the house. She had put up with Walter's domineering demeanor for far too long, and this incident was the breaking point for her. Walter was often giving orders as though he had the right to. One night, despite Donna's weariness from work, he insisted that she'd bring him ice cream so he could unwind. Donna said he could get it himself, and Walter smiled and hinted that there would be repercussions if he got furious. His actions were not only annoying, but also draining. Donna began to doubt whether it could last to live with someone who assumed supremacy just because he was the spouse, as she began to feel more and more devalued and mistreated. She came to the realization that she couldn't carry on in this manner if nothing changed. Donna believed it was time for Walter to take responsibility for his actions and realize the repercussions of his overbearing behavior. I realized then that managing Walter on top of my already demanding work would be the tipping point for my stress levels. I thus said to him, "I'm quite exhausted. I apologize. I'm heading to my room to relax." Not appreciating my answer, Walter obstructed my path and questioned me, saying, "Wait, why are you treating your husband like that? If I wanted to, I could throw you out now. Do you believe that upsetting your spouse in such a way is acceptable?" He appeared enraged. I was puzzled as to how he could be so domineering without giving anything in return, and how easily he could make me feel uncomfortable, but he couldn't even take the smallest annoyance himself. It resembled handling a toddler's tantrum. "I apologize, but I'm worn out," I said, feigning a grin, no longer willing to engage anymore. "Please just try to understand." "You're such a disappointment as a wife," Walter mumbled, letting out a big sigh. It was beyond my energy to dispute. I just said it again, "I'm sorry," and went back to my room. Walter's domineering actions were wearing me down day by day, but I was too tired to deal with him. Then one day, I developed a bad cold, which the doctor thought was a fever brought on by stress. My first thought was of Walter's relentless pressure. I had to take a day off from work since I was so sick that all I could do was lie in bed. Walter angrily exclaimed, "A cold." Upon learning of my condition, "That is merely a pretext. Go to work, you're useless." His harsh words seemed to make my fever spike even higher. He declared, "I won't be taking care of you. This is your mess. Deal with it." So I was left alone in my room, moaning from the fever with no one to help. I was too weak to prepare anything for myself, and I didn't want to face Walter again for fear of more verbal abuse. My temperature reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The fever was so intense that my body was drenched in sweat. I couldn't even get up to change my soaked clothes. I lay there pondering how much easier things might be if I could just pass away. With these grim thoughts, I endured a painful night alone. Perhaps it was the fever talking, but in my heart, I knew something had to change. Throughout the night, as the sun disappeared and the stars took over the sky, a deep sense of loneliness and doubt overwhelmed me. I longed for Walter's support, not even to cure my fever, but just to bring me an ice pack, apply a cool compress, and ask if I was okay. Sadly, this was just a fantasy. Instead, the words I received from him harsh and uncaring, cutting deep and stirring up new anxieties. I questioned why I was the only one suffering, what I had done wrong, and why things couldn't be smoother between us. Once these thoughts began, I couldn't hold back the tears. The pain was just too much. After 5 days of rest, my fever subsided enough for me to return to work. My colleagues and bosses expressed their concern, asking if I was truly okay to be back. Although I was still recuperating, I felt compelled to support our household financially and couldn't afford more time off. Their genuine concern touched me deeply, such a stark contrast to Walter's indifference, and nearly brought me to tears again. At this point, a voice inside me screamed that I could no longer deal with Walter's behavior. I was pushing myself too hard, ignoring the signs that this way of life was unsustainable. Deep down, I knew that I couldn't keep going like this without eventually collapsing from the strain. By now, my feelings for Walter had significantly diminished, yet I lacked the energy to contemplate a separation. Amid these tumultuous feelings, I trudged through my days, working hard, returning home exhausted, and catering to Walter's unpredictable demands. This has become my daily routine. Then one day, while I was trying to find a moment of peace in my room, Walter called out, wanting to discuss something serious. It had been a long time since we had a real conversation. Typically, Walter would make significant decisions unilaterally. With a heavy heart, I sat down for the discussion, fearing what might come next. To my shock, Walter, with unexpected enthusiasm, announced, "I'll let my parents live in this house. You can't even cook, so leave." The first word that slipped out of my mouth was, "What?" He continued, "You need to leave because you're living with my in-laws." I was stunned, unable to accept the reality of his selfish demands. The situation had reached a breaking point, and I realized something had to change. As Walter steered the conversation forward, he revealed his plans to change the ownership of our house, transferring it to his name and his parents. He bluntly stated his intentions to divorce me and start a new life, declaring his decision final and immune to my opinions. I felt utterly disregarded, my feelings trampled under decisions made without my consent. Walter, inflated with his man-of-the-house ego, seemed only concerned with his desires. My heart sank as I realized the impossibility of continuing life with him. Ignoring my growing detachment, Walter jeered, "You love me so much, don't you?" I know this is shocking coming from a husband you love so dearly, but I'm sorry, I just want to take care of my family. Please understand. His words, meant to sound considerate, felt more like a scolding. I wanted to shout that he was wrong. Any affection I once felt for Walter had evaporated, leaving behind only disbelief at his selfishness and regret for not severing ties sooner. Why hadn't I left him earlier? If I had, perhaps he wouldn't have had the opportunity to exploit and demean me so thoroughly. I even resented my past self for being too lenient with him. Seeing my visible distress, Walter misread my pain as lingering love, thinking I couldn't bear the thought of a divorce. But he was mistaken. My feelings for him had long since faded into nothing more than disdain for a man who wrongly believed I still cared. Determined to set things straight, I said firmly, "Fine, then I'll leave." Walter gasped, "What?" He hadn't anticipated my readiness to accept the divorce and move on. He needed to understand that the old me, who always bailed him out, was gone for good. From now on, whatever happened to Walter, he would face it without me because our relationship was over. Seeing my resolve, Walter stood shocked and frozen. I seized the moment to head to my room and pack the essentials. I knew I couldn't take larger items today and would need to arrange for movers later. As I began to pack, Walter hurried over, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of the situation. Walter approached me, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Are you sure about this? If we divorce, we'll be strangers." I smiled softly and replied, I've already fallen out of love with you. Letting go feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders." Hearing this, Walter stood there looking bewildered and lost. I nodded, thanked him for the years together, and walked out of the house. His worried expression lingered in my mind as I returned to my parents' home. Upon explaining everything to my parents, they initially reacted with fury at Walter's behavior, but soon calmed down, reassured by my resolve and the plan I had in place. I began to recuperate at my parents' home, taking the first steps by initiating the divorce proceedings. After I sent the divorce papers, Walter messaged me, "Are you sure about this? I don't know if it's really a good thing, but I don't have any feelings for you anymore. If we've gone this far, there's no turning back." His message concluded with a request to expedite the divorce. "I feel so much better now that you're gone, so fill out the divorce papers quickly," I replied, but received no response. A few days later, I received the completed divorce papers from Walter, with his sections already filled out. I promptly completed my part and submitted it to the county office. Now Walter and I were officially divorced. During the divorce, we divided our assets. Walter received the house as he had insisted, so I transferred ownership to him and chose to move on. The house had never really felt like home to me. It was more of a burden. Instead, I sought alimony from Walter, which his parents initially covered since he wasn't working. However, he was now job hunting, likely planning to repay them once he secured employment. But as is often the case, reality doesn't always align with plans. A month after the divorce was finalized, I had moved out of my parents' home into a new place, enjoying a more peaceful life. Then I received a call from Walter. Honestly, it was annoying. I could guess why he was calling, but ignoring him might lead to more complications. So knowing I'd have to address it sooner or later for the sake of my future, I answered the phone with a firm, "Hello, what do you want?" Completely fed up, I wanted him to get straight to the point. Reluctantly, I listened as he pleaded, "Please help me." His desperate tone made me chuckle. Walter was clearly in a tough spot, and while part of me felt distant, another part was mildly amused by the irony of his desperation. Walter's call caught me off guard. I hadn't expected things to have deteriorated so quickly. "Well, what's going on?" "You need to tell me the whole story," I replied, half amused by the situation. I suspected why Walter might be struggling, but I wanted him to lay it all out himself. With a hesitant voice and stumbling over his words, Walter began to explain. He had taken over the house after our divorce and managed it fine for a month. However, he now faced a rent payment he couldn't meet due to his unemployment. Desperate, he had asked my former parents-in-law, who were on a pension, for help, but the rent was much steeper than anyone anticipated, about $2,500, a sum they couldn't afford on their fixed income. My former in-laws were livid, accusing him of misleading them. "This isn't what we agreed to," they insisted, placing the blame squarely on Walter. Feeling lost and unsure, Walter called me, nearly in tears. "I didn't realize the rent would be so high. The place is a mess. Now what are you going to do about it?" Frustrated and overwhelmed, Walter was now trying to pin the blame on me. Admittedly, I hadn't discussed the specifics of the rent before our separation, but it was Walter's folly to assume responsibility for the house without understanding the financial commitments involved. He had pushed me away, treating me like an outsider, and now he was facing the consequences of his decisions. Despite this, he seemed unable to accept responsibility and reached out to me for help. I couldn't help but sigh at his audacity. Ignoring the strain in his voice, Walter continued urgently, "Please, I need your help. We can't keep going like this. I need you." His desperation was palpable. The rent due date had likely already passed, which meant they might be behind on payments. The landlord of that house had a reputation for being temperamental and strict about rent deadlines. I remember being warned repeatedly when I was still living there, never be late with the rent. If they missed a payment, they would face serious repercussions. Walter, having met the landlord a few times, knew exactly how intimidating they could be. His call was a last-ditch effort driven by sheer desperation. When Walter called me pleading for help, he said, "Please, just cover the rent for 1 month. I don't have anyone else to turn to. You still care about me, right? If someone you care about is in trouble, you should help them out." His tone was still self-centered, as if he hadn't changed at all. I wanted to tell him straight that my feelings for him had long since faded, but instead, I held back and replied coldly, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any obligation to help you. You were the one who cut me off, and now you expect me to assist you when it's convenient for you. That's not fair." Walter tried to defend himself. "Please don't be so cold. I really can't handle this alone. Whether you still love me or not doesn't matter now. We were married once, right? Can't you help me out just this once?" "No, you were the one who left me. Even before that, my feelings for you had already cooled. It's been a long time since I stopped loving you," I responded firmly. Hearing Walter's dejected voice on the other end, he said, "I can't believe it," which struck a chord deep within me. For so long, I had endured everything, even when Walter was selfish, took me for granted, or mistreated me, especially when I was sick. I stayed by his side, hoping to salvage our marriage. I worked tirelessly for the life we had, but this was the outcome. Why hadn't I left sooner when my love for him faded? Why didn't I distance myself earlier? These regrets flooded in, mingling with the anger I felt towards him. Walter never truly faced me. He never showed real concern, never protected me, and never embraced the idea of navigating life together as a team. All this time, he treated me like a maid, a mere money-making machine. Each time he acted this way, he seemed oblivious to my suffering. Yet now, despite all this being a result of his actions, he came pleading for help as if he were the victim. His self-centered attitude was repelling. "Please help me, I'm begging you. What about getting married again? Let's start over properly this time. I promise I'll never push you away again," Walter proposed desperately. I couldn't help but feel a mix of incredulity and annoyance. How could he think a simple plea for help could erase the years of neglect and misunderstanding? His desperation was evident, but so was the clarity of my decision not to fall back into the same pattern. I had moved on, and it was time for Walter to do the same. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly at Walter's desperate suggestion. "Are you kidding me? All of this is the result of your actions. I've been trying to find peace in my own way for a long time. I kept hoping you would face reality, and now you want me to start over with you, pretending none of that ever happened. Do you expect me to go back to those miserable days? That's never going to happen. I refused to return to that life, no matter what. I was overcome with emotion and began to cry. I couldn't determine if they were caused by melancholy or rage. Walter did not answer my words. He just stayed mute on the other end. I just muttered goodbye and hung up, unable to carry on the conversation any longer. Walter didn't return my call, so I blocked his number so I wouldn't ever hear from him again. I later learned that Walter and his family had been forced out of their house by mutual friends. Walter attempted to convince my ex-in-laws to pay his rent, but they were incensed and turned him down, which infuriated the landlord even more. They had to go since they had nowhere else to go. Walter is currently working part-time to make ends meet because he hasn't had much luck obtaining a full-time job. All three of my former in-laws are currently crowded into a dilapidated apartment after being forced to sell their property. I have, however, been utterly devoted to my work, and my supervisor and I have even talked about a promotion. I have the potential to be our company's first female manager, and both juniors and colleagues have expressed appreciation for me. Friends will occasionally ask if I'm considering getting married again. To be honest, I have a bad opinion about marriage because of my previous experiences. I'm not interested in dating or getting married again at the moment, but life is too long to rush things. This generation has a large number of people who are blissfully single their entire lives. Living a life without regrets and remaining loyal to who I am are the things that really matter to me. In light of this, I want to carry on moving at my own speed and facing every challenge head-on with fortitude and self-reliance.